All right, so now that we have our player stats, and our player stats have stats that we can augment without affecting any of the base settings that we've applied, as well as our equipment, we can now implement, at the very least, our passive skill system and affect these stats via passive skills that have been unlocked by the player. Now, I haven't 100% decided on how I want to unlock the passive skills, and doing the UI for the passive skills is not going to be a part of this video series. I've got a few ideas, but I haven't quite decided on which one to go with in regards to that. So until I've come to that decision, and honestly, it's going to be a lot of experimentation, so I may or may not record that. I'm not going to bother with that for this session. So we're going to be implementing our player skills, our passive skills, and depending on which skills are marked as enabled or available to the player, we'll have those affect these stats that are in our player stats class, and then via the calculate methods that we added before, we'll just naturally have these additions to our combat ability. So let's see here. As far as an object model goes, well, first off, I need a folder. Or do I? Player. Yeah, okay, so here's my scripts. Scripts, player. How do I want to organize this? Let me think for a moment. So first off, our skills are not going to be monobehaviors, right? Just simple classes. So a skill at its core has what? Key, display name, description. So similar to my inventory system, I've got a key through which, in the code, I can reference these things by. In the case of an item, I've got a definition that has some of this more visual information. And then I have subclasses of inventory item that describe different types of items. Consumable item, an upgrade item, a weapon, shield, armor. And some of these have different values on their own, and some of them simply just have different definitions. So active skill, I'm not going to worry too much about at the moment. Passive skill, I'm going to have a key by which to reference the skill. A display name, which is what will be shown on the screen when we're selecting skills, and a description, which will be a little blurb of text. Now, a passive skill is going to have some kind of a stat effect, and an active skill will be usable in battle or the overworld. And like I said, I'm not going to worry about active skills for the moment. I'm only going to worry about passive skills. So a passive skill, in addition to this key, display name, and description, is going to need to know about the stat it's going to be augmenting and the value by which it will be augmenting it. So some of our values are ints and some of them are floats. So I can cast a float to an int and store the value in only whole numbers, but I can't, an int can't hold a fraction of a value. So value is going to be a float, and as the need requires it, I'm just going to downcast to an int. I might add a property here that indicates the type of the value, but for the moment, I'm not going to worry about that too much. All right. And for the name, that'll be fine. So I'm going to match this up, not to the name of a property. Where are my player stats? There you are. Actually, yeah. So I'm going to have an attribute on here. I think attribute already has a name property on it, but I'm not sure. I guess not. So, with this attribute, when I go to apply my passive skills, this string will be the member, or rather be the value of this stat name, and I'm going to loop over all my passive skills, and then I'm going to use reflection against my player stats to look for attributes that match that same name and apply the value to that property. Now, why I'm doing an attribute rather than just looking at the property name itself is I'm just planning ahead for the possibility that I might have passive skills that apply to multiple multiple properties. And what I mean by that is I might say, for instance, I have increase normal attack accuracy passive skill. I might have increase critical attack accuracy passive skill. I might have a passive skill that increases all accuracies. So I want to be able to say stat descriptor normal attack accuracy, stat descriptor attack accuracy. And it should build because I specified on my attribute that allow multiple was true, meaning multiple instances of this attribute can exist on the same property, or only properties because I specified attribute target property, but really you could apply that to anything. So I'm then going to also call this a critical attack accuracy, but I might have a passive skill that increases attack accuracy by X%. And when I go ahead and write my code to apply that value to all matching properties with that attribute, it will apply that value to both of these accuracy stats and not just one or the other. Or without me, an alternative to that would be having the passive skill have multiple values that it's being applied to. Second reason I made that separation is because I'm likely going to store my skills definitions in a database. And if I decide to go through and I'm refactoring my code, maybe I'm renaming a few things or changing some stuff, I don't want to have to go and change my data based on changes to my code. Whereas if I leave these attributes alone, nothing in the game is going to see these string values, and my database is going to know to still sync up to these properties, even though maybe I've changed this from normal attack accuracy to normal attack accuracy percentage, or attack accuracy, or whatever variations I might decide on. Just adds a nice little degree of separation there, so I don't need to go from top to bottom and rename everything if I decide to rename one property. So we'll go with these couple for now for the sake of the video. I'll go in and deal with the rest of these in a bit. So let's just start with attack damage. And actually that's a good example. I might want to rename this right now to normal attack damage. Would be much more descriptive. And since I'm early on, I don't mind doing that. So I don't have to change this anywhere else. Now, so I got my passive skill, I got my stat name and my value that I'm applying. I am going to have a repository of stat skills. And I'm going to create a temporary one here. So you'll see I've got this dialog repository that goes through this iData service. This is my my implementation of my SQLite. Well, that's an interface that knows to get a string array of dialog entries based on this key. I have my SQLite data service, which has my SQLite database that has some very temporary table information that I was experimenting with, and it implements this and knows to do the select statement for my database given the criteria of the NPC key. Now, I've also then got some other fake ones, like I used for, like I showed before, with my weapon definitions and my armor. I've kind of just made these things in code, and I've defined their stats here, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with this approach inherently, right? But if I want to edit this information outside of the code, maybe I have another person working on that aspect of it. If it was in a secondary storage location like a SQLite database or a flat file or whatever, I could then just I could hand that off not have to worry about it, and when I get it back in, just import it. You know, and that other person might be someone that isn't comfortable with code or whatever. But for test data, I really don't mind just writing a quick thing. So I'm going to have a skill repository. Yeah, I'm just going to call it skill repository for the moment. I'll decide later on whether or not I'm going to split this into an active and passive skill repository. So let's see here. So my skill repository, I'm going to have, we'll keep it very simple right now. Go ahead and format this a little bit. All right, so I have a attack 1. We go attack 2. Attack 3. Now, how do I want to store these? So the skill repository has the definition of what skills there are. This isn't necessarily what skills the player has unlocked. So do I want to do a system by which I have a list of these skills that are unlocked by the player? Really, I only need a list of the keys and whether they're, well, actually, if they're unlocked, I can just add to the list of keys. And that keeps the data size pretty small for when I go to save data. Yeah, and especially if I'm considering generating the UI for unlocking this on the fly based on the definitions. Which, another thing, I did not make any reference to this. So, actually, I'm going to list this as a to-do for the moment. I need to create a system by which there is a relationship between skill parents and children. So you could only unlock attack 2 if you've already unlocked attack 1, and you could only unlock attack 3 if you've unlocked attack 2, which requires attack 1. That's a very simple relationship. I just have a property for the parent, which will be the either the key, well, it'll be the key. If I'm going to store this in the database, I can't have a reference to the instance of the parent skill. And if I want to have more than one parent required to unlock, I need a string array. So we'll just go ahead and do this now. So these parents will help us organize the location of the skills at runtime, which will be a tricky problem to solve when the time comes. It'll be fun too. And this also sets the requirements. So that's fine here. So parent's going to be null for attack 1. Parents is equal to new. And parent for attack 3 is attack 2. Now, the player so I've decided that I'm going to add my passive skills to these stats. Now, there is a problem with that. What do I do with these stats when I save them? These stats will be the calculated stats of the skills. So, this might invalidate some of our code that we wrote earlier. Let me think about this for a moment. So that's fine. So these stats are always going to start as calculated stats, right? Like that's kind of the deal. That was the intent that I had when I started this. So when I go to save, on the load I need to either reset these based on the skills when I go to calculate up the skill information, or I need to do a little attribute shenanigans or a custom serializer to ignore these properties. All of which I'm perfectly fine with. So I don't know why I had to stop and think about that. That should have been obvious from the start. Just I got distracted there for a second. So lost my train of thought. So I got my passive skills, and I got these guys, and I need a list of skills that the player has. So this is going to be non-editable. No, that's not true. I need to load this up later. So, but I shouldn't call that active skills. That means something else in my verbiage. Unlock skills. And we're going to go ahead and add a property for this because I am going to need to save this. I'm going to need to load this when I go back and fix my saving and loading mechanism that I broke the serialization of with my new base class. And I'll go ahead and clear and then add items to this on load. But as far as this guy goes, I'll just go ahead and instantiate in here, and it can't be instantiated from outside of player. So I need to have some test data here for this. Well, I can just fake this for the moment. So unlock skills. And actually I'm going to do this. I need to load my test skills before I load my test data for stats. No, I can apply to my stats later. So we'll do that. And I haven't decided yet whether all passive skills will be active to the player if they've unlocked them, or if they can only have certain number of skills activated at a time. Either the skills have a cost and the player only has a certain number of skill points that can be applied, or they just have a certain whole number of skills that can be set. Not sure. That's still up in the air. Okay, so load test skill data. We've had this dot stats dot we're going to just call it what it is. We're going to apply skills. Yeah, error check here. No, you know what? I don't need to return an error back. If the player hasn't unlocked any skills, they haven't unlocked any skills. So we're going to loop over this, and we're going to look for and also I needed to make this accessible. So yeah. There we go. We'll make him a singleton for the moment, but yeah. We're going to be popping back here and probably removing all of these singleton instances later. But for now, I need to be able to access this globally, rather. And yes, this is sloppy. This is very much, like I said before, I'm probably going to be putting this into a database. So this is very much a temporary construct. But I need a way to get this. So let's see if I remember how to do this. So So we're going to get all the properties from our player stats class, this guy. So we've got information about all these. So if our skill is not equal to null, so for our case here, we're only really concerned with passive skills. So because I use the as keyword here, it's going to do a cast to passive skill. But if that cast isn't applicable to the type I'm getting back, or to the instance I'm getting back rather, skill will just be null. So that saves us a little bit of effort. So skill dot stat name. So if our skill's not equal to null and our string is null or empty, if we have a stat name and skill dot value is not equal to 0. Why skill value would be 0, I don't know, but if there's no effect on the stat, there's no reason for us to continue searching the properties for the matching names. So properties where we're going to keep this clean and simple here. So for each property info in properties, I'm going to go ahead and say info.get custom attributes, which is going to return back a... I could swear there was an easier way to do this. This isn't a property attributes object. What are you? That's not helpful. Okay, so get custom attributes is what I need to do. And this is just returning an object array. Okay, and this is the part where then I need to go to Google because I do not remember how to do this off the top of my head exactly. Okay, that was very close anyways. So yeah, get custom attributes. Which gets us an object array of all the attributes on the property. Why are you yelling at me? Oh. What do you want? True to search member's inheritance chain to find the attribute, otherwise false. The parameter is ignored for properties and events. See remarks. That's a non-issue for the moment, so I'll save some performance and say false, but I did specify that the attribute could be inherited. So if I do come across a scenario where I inherit yet another class and I do it from player stats, I will want to check the inheritance chain. Actually, I want to do that anyways because I'm definitely going to have stats that affect the HP and MP and stamina. So we're going to go ahead and loop over each of these attributes. For each object, attribute in attributes. Then we're going to go ahead and try and cast these to a stat descriptor attribute. So if the name in our stat descriptor attribute matches the stat name from the skill, we need to get the value from the property, which is going to be an object. And this is the part where it's going to get a little tricky because it's get values and set values are ignoring the actual type. And since not all of these are floats, I think I need to do some shenanigans here. So let's just try, if I remember right, there is a switch statement that I can do on property type. Yeah, property type is the system dot type of our guy. Can I use system.type in a switch statement? That I do not remember. I'm pretty sure the answer is no. Yeah. So, the fact of the matter is though, I've only got ints and I've only got floats. So I will not think about this too hard for the moment. I might come back here and need to clean this up later, but I'm going to do some cheap stuff here. So if this property, if info dot property type is equal to type of int, else if info dot property type else it's a float. That's going to compile. That's going to compile. So int per val is equal to so I'm going to get the value from this instance, and I do not need any index information. That should all be happy. So I'm taking the value from this instance's version of this property, incrementing it by the value from the skill, and I'm setting it back to this property's value. And I'm going to do the exact same thing down here, except instead of integer values, I am obviously using floats. And actually, that just means I don't need the cast on that front. And I'll tell you what, we have no test data. These are all going to be zeros. So let's go ahead and do a little write statement here. So all right, so we're going to go ahead and right here, we apply the skills. So I'm going to do a this.stats.debug log, and I'm going to do a this.stats.debug log. And based on our stats we've added here, we should see all zeros except for normal attack, which will have the value of 1, if I remember right. 2. It's attack 1 increases attack by 2, and attack 2 increases by 5, and attack 3 increases by 10. So let's go ahead and give her a sweet little spin and see what's in our log here. Come on. I really hate how finicky this is sometimes. There we go. All right. So as you can see here, our normal attack and accuracy and all this are zeros. Our normal attack damage is now 2. And all that, and there we go. Let's go ahead and apply a few more here. So we'll get attack 2, which should make our resulting damage 7. And there we are, 7. And let's go ahead and now adding strings to unlock skills has no checks as far as if the prerequisites were met. If attack 2 was unlocked, we can use attack 3. There's nothing like that. And you can see here with attack 2 and 3, the 10 and 5, we now have a normal attack damage of 15, which, as we saw before, normal attack damage is an increase on the weapon's base min and max damage. So now we have a system by which passive skills are stored in our system, and the player has unlocked certain passive skills, and they are now they're now affecting stats based on a setup where it matches information on the skill to attributes on our stats. So, as far as the permission to use the stats go, what I was just describing with attack 1 being required to have attack 2 and attack 2 being required to have attack 3, personally, I think I don't care about that at this point. Like, I want that restriction to be set when I'm on the stat screen and I'm unlocking skills. I need to prevent the player from unlocking certain stats if they haven't met the prerequisites. But do I need to check every time they load the save file or start the game, or do I need to check the skills every time they go to attack or start a battle? I think that gets more into a anti-hacking security type of conversation, which personally, since this is going to be a single player game, I don't give a damn if somebody wants to hack their save file and do whatever they want. Like, if they really want to do it, they're going to find a way to do it. I mean, hell, if I'm sending out a lot of my information in a SQLite database, I mean, it'll be encrypted when Unity does the compilation, I'm assuming. And I could do an additional step of encryption, but ultimately nothing's fail-safe, right? If I really wanted to be even more paranoid about it, I could serve that information up from a service every time the user launches the game. But if their internet's out and they can't get that information, that could cause problems, and then I'm just burdening my users to protect from something that ultimately doesn't matter. So I think that's about what I'm going to do with this today. I still need to have a screen that unlocks skills, and I do need to figure out what my issue is with my save files, and I need to add these unlocked skills to the save file so I can, save, load, keep track of these skills. And I also need to implement an active skill system, but really active skills will come with a lot more. I need to have my MP gauge in here. I need to set up a control scheme for it and do a lot more. So I'll probably do that as part of a different series. But yeah, why don't I, it's fairly early still. Why don't I go ahead and take a look at whatever this save issue was. So let's run on over here to my stupid blue sphere and new save file. And we're loading in here. XML element did not appear. So first off, anytime you're having serialization issues and you've changed schema and you've done some stuff, first thing first is delete the existing files. Because quite frankly, that's just trouble waiting to happen. So you won't see it on the stream, but I've just opened up my folder in my, on Windows. It's under the app data folder under your user account in local low / company name, which company name is a part of your settings. So you can see right here, I'm still using default company, and ignore this name of Dungeoneer 2. Dungeoneer was my mobile game, my first-person RPG that at this point does not bear much similarity to this at all. It was an on-the-grid, turn-based system. Decent enough little game, but ultimately Dungeoneer 2 was a code name. So I'm going to go ahead and... So the folder path is user / your username / app data / local low / the company name / the product name. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete those. And that is the application dot, I think it's persistent data path in Unity. And I can find that out really quick as we are heading in here anyways. Yeah, application.persistent data path is what that resolves to. So now with no information here, Yeah, no errors. And actually, I need to comment out this debug.log. I was debugging some issues with one of my AI patterns a little while back. I was having some interesting performance issues where the game was stalling every so often. And what I came to find was that my AI that makes the little rabbit on the overworld stop and look around was triggering a ton of physics.raycast results. And it was triggering, as near as I can tell, because each one of these grass items has a physics collider on it, which was creating a huge impact. Well, it wasn't a huge impact because of the system. It was a huge impact because in my code here that looks around, it's in a coroutine and it deals with yield returning for a certain amount of time based on whether they can look right or look left. Well, neither of these were triggering. I did not have this yield return wait for seconds in case there was an obstacle in either direction they would look and they just need to stop and look straight ahead. So it was just sitting in this do while loop until the time ran out and then moving ahead, which without the yield return was waiting on the main UI thread, which caused not only my game to freeze up, but the entirety of Unity to lock up. You know, that'll happen. That'll happen. So, where was I? I was not talking about grazing AI behaviors. I was talking about application persistent data paths. And so we got our load here, and our load returned nothing. And I killed that transition debug log, so this should be a little nicer to me. Yeah, just tell me about all the models I loaded in. Quite frankly, that can go away too, but we'll get rid of that in a second. So we'll come in here, no errors, new save file, and we got an error. Argument object player stats is not a primitive, XML serialization, blah, system name, string name, blah, 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 blah. All right, so player stats is not primitive. Well, yeah, because what? So I've got my save metadata, which has some esoteric information about my save file, nothing huge. Player save data, which has player name, vector3 position, and because the serialized information is my base stats and not my player stats. Yeah, the player stats is entirely calculated information from my skills and maybe from equipment, and maybe I'll take those parts out of my code earlier where I was getting the equipment values and then adding them to the stats. Maybe I'll just add my equipment to my stats and not really, need to grab all those multiple sources at the point of calculation. I can roll those all into the player stats. But for now, I don't need to save anything from the player stats. So what I really need is to know. So this guy's getting passed into save. Yeah, save file manager. And I've got my, in the UI, I've got my save game controller. Right? Don't I? Where'd you go? Oh, in the save folder. Yeah, so I got my save game controller, and he's dealing with save file manager, and he's gonna call .save somewhere in here. Create file from current. Should be fine, maybe. Yeah, same thing. So there we go. So we'll just construct a new base stats and copy things over. So create file from current, that's fine. So load this save. I need to deal with this. So that's a new file save, and this is save. So this is going to overwrite that existing file. That's fine. Player instance stats.hydrate. So this is going to hydrate from those base stats. Yeah. Okay, so that should be fine. While I'm thinking about it, I'll drop a couple more debug log statements there, so I don't need to look at this cluttered log screen. Yeah, new save file. I'm gonna go ahead and load this save file, and I'm back here at this location. Let's go and take a little damage. I suppose I should wait, take a little damage. Go ahead and escape. And yeah, that won't be the time it takes to escape in an actual game. That's just for my testing purposes. So we'll save a new file. I'm going to go ahead and load this original file, and my HP is back to full. I'm going to go ahead and load this file, and my HP is back to a couple millimeters off. Yeah, I think that's about all we'll cover for today's session. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you've learned something new or laughed at how scatterbrained I am jumping around my code like this. Have a nice night, and I will see you next time. Thank you.